Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. My name is Dayle Annand. Today, for I think the third time, we have Marilyn Boyer with us from Master Books and from, is it Learning Parenting?
Character concepts, yeah.
Character Concepts. Sorry, I
Yeah.
got that
Well,
mixed up.
we're learning parent too. We're both.
You got all kinds of stuff going on, Marilyn.
We do.
I'm super excited that you took time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today about new stuff. Now, Marilyn's always got new stuff coming out. We just covered a lot of stuff from her in her Who, What, Why series, and then a new books that came out on that, and then the whole box set now came out. Which, if you guys haven't checked it out on Master Books, I'm going to link it here. But you have to, and if you can get it, you need to, because it's amazing. All the books in there. Anyway. But we're going to talk about her new one that just came out, and she has the proof of it because she just got her copy of it as the author in the mail. So it is called Legends of the Faith, Early Church Fathers. I'm really excited about this because it's the beginning of a new series, as if we needed more from Marilyn, which we do, because she's an amazing writer and an awesome storyteller. And she finds stories, you guys, that I can't even believe the stories that she knows and the way that she writes them. And so I'm excited to learn about church history. This is the beginning of your series on church history, correct, Marilyn?
It is. And I didn't know a whole lot about church history. Master Books asked me to do it, and I love to write. I love to research. I love to write. But I have learned so much. I mean, it's fascinating, church history. And this is the first of 4. There'll be 4 books. I've also written one on famous preachers and evangelists and missionaries, and I'm writing about hymn writers now.
Wow.
Whoa. I mean, it's amazing information.
Wow. Well, I'm just super excited to see them all and maybe we'll have a whole nother box set of just church history, which is
There's
great.
going to be. Yeah, they're going to do a 4 book box set of church history.
I thought I was on to something new, but Master Books is always one step ahead of us, as usual. I'm excited about this. So, Marilyn, first, before we begin into anything, tell us about yourself and your family.
Okay, I am the mom of 14 homeschooled kids.
Wow, that blows my mind.
And I homeschooled officially for 37 years. My last child graduated. She is now a pilot for American Airlines. She just got on with them last week, and she's actually flying passengers around the country. Anyway, I homeschooled all my kids. We started back in 1980. We didn't know anybody that was doing it. And I never even dreamed there would be anything like a homeschooling movement, just never entered my mind. But we felt like God wanted to do that for our kids. And we got such fantastic results. I cannot imagine doing it any other way. I mean, it's a huge time commitment. It's often, like almost always, overwhelming, but it's so worth it. Looking back, my kids, thankfully, they all live in town. They all live near us.
So good.
We get together every Friday night for family night, and my kids are each other's best friends, and they all love the Lord. They're all servant-hearted, and I don't think we could have accomplished that if we hadn't homeschooled our kids, because you're with them for the best hours of their day. And it's been such a blessing to me to see my kids grow up and homeschool their kids and continue serving others, looking for ways to be a blessing to those around them. That's what it's all about.
That's exciting. I now see in my head, I'm a big idea person. Everybody knows that about me that knows me. But now I see in my head a whole episode with Marilyn talking about how did you do that? Homeschool pioneers, how did you do that? Because that's just something that would be fun. I can think of a lot of people that I would like to talk to about all that.
Yeah. I just recently did a new session on I'm done homeschooling, things I would do differently, things I would do again.
Okay. We're going to have to revisit all of this, Marilyn. Stay tuned, you guys. You don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be amazing. It might be a 3-part series for all we know. But anyways, I'm super excited about that now too. But today we're going to talk about fathers of our faith, like our what is it called? Early church fathers. I'm sorry. I need to get my stuff straight here. So we're going to talk about that. As usual, Marilyn, you have a list of people, some I've heard of, some I haven't, and full of stories. I read the first 20 pages of the book that's on the website. And it was like This is amazing, and I'm really excited about it. I think that if you have first of all, who is this geared towards? With the age group. Let's talk about that first.
Master Books is saying like grade 6 through high school.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking younger kids will like listening to it too. And that's with our other book, the What a Character series. It's kind of ageless. You know, the younger
Yeah.
kids like listening, the older kids like reading. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you're actually having them read, probably junior high, high school.
Yeah, for sure. And so I just want to talk about, man, just a few like, you start off with the introduction of Jesus, John, and Paul, and
Yes,
just the beginning of it all. Why did you start there? Well, obviously Jesus,
because
of course.
well, true, but it all goes back to there. It's so
Mhm.
fascinating. You know, Jesus with the Great Commission, he said, "Go ye therefore and make disciples of all nations." And he sent his disciples out to spread the gospel. And, you know, that gospel message, John 3:16, we know that so well. For God so loved the world, he
Yeah.
gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Well, the disciple John was with him. He was Jesus' beloved disciple. He lived with him on earth. And the first man that I talk about in this book is Polycarp. He was actually a disciple of the Apostle John.
I
So
know. That's so
the
crazy.
history goes back to Jesus. And what was fascinating to me is through all these men that I talk about, the gospel was retained. Some of them were different denominations or whatever, but the gospel was pure and the
Mhm.
gospel remained intact. And just the things that happened to them in their lives, some of them were martyred, but some were sent out. You know, they'd have to leave one area, go to another area, but the gospel was spread. So God knew what he was doing
Yeah.
in the lives of these men. He was taking his word to spread it to the ends of the earth. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. There are some, like I said, there are some names on here that are familiar, like Patrick of Ireland. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about because it's from slave to missionary, and I'm like, maybe I'm not familiar with all of Patrick's story, but I would love to hear a little bit about him.
It's amazing. He grew up in a wealthy family in Britain, and he was captured when he was a teenager by Irish. The Irish were kind of a rough lot, I guess, and they would send ships out to capture people to use them as slaves. So he was actually at his great estate on the lawn on this hill overlooking the water when he saw some Irish ships coming in, and he went to notify his family and their servants, and in the process, he was captured. He'd been like in charge of the estate. He was captured, he was taken to Ireland and put in charge of watching sheep. But because of that, he found the Lord there. He had all these hours by himself out on the sheep hills, and he realized that he had not paid much attention to the gospel. He was brought up in a Christian home, but he'd just kind of taken it for granted. And he started praying and praying. He had all these hours out there on the sheep fields, and he prayed and he clarified, he got confirmation that he was saved, that he was a Christian. And then he had a dream where he felt like God was saying he was going to be able to go back home. So he ended up escaping, and the whole story, I can't go into it
Yeah,
all.
don't
It's
go into
really
it all because you got
cool.
to save some for the book.
That's right. So he escapes and he goes back to his family in the midst of many acts of danger. He finally makes it back. And he was so glad to be home. His family was so glad to have him back. But then God started impressing upon him that he needed to go back and share the gospel with people in Ireland. He did
Wow,
not want to do it. You know,
I'm
he didn't
sure.
ever want to go back to Ireland.
Yeah.
But he felt like God was telling him, I want you to do this. So he went and got his training, and he went back to Ireland. And less than 60 years after he went to Ireland as a missionary, thousands of Irish people had surrendered their lives to the Lord and
Wow,
accepted the gospel. And it's so amazing.
that's
You know,
incredible.
God took it further here with Patrick, took it into Ireland. And actually, he was instrumental in bringing the gospel into the Middle Ages. He did his part of doing that. And then he died on March 17th, which is when people celebrate St. Patrick's
Yep.
Day. And that's why. But I didn't know his Christian emphasis. I didn't know any of
Yeah.
that about him. It's amazing.
I had no idea about any of that. And this is why history is so incredible because we hear the names And we get the same story that we get year after year. And we tend to then just kind of shut it down like, okay, well, they did this, George Washington and, St. Patrick and all these different things. And then we start to really hear about them through stories like yours, like your books. And it's like all of a sudden it comes to life. And to hear that he was instrumental in bringing the gospel into the Dark Ages is incredible. I just guess I never realized that.
I
And
didn't, but
yeah, and like watching God's hand in history just work
love
its way through, right? Like you can look at
that.
it and when you learn church history, then you fully can understand secular history, right? It's like you
Absolutely.
just see God's hand in all of it and how it just is woven through the whole thing and his
It
whole
is.
plan.
It is. It's his plan. And you can see God knew what he was doing all along. Even
Yeah.
sometimes, like Polycarp was burned at the stake, but they thought that they would shut down this movement by burning the leaders. Instead, it kind of inspired the followers to be stronger in their faith and to get out there and share the gospel.
Yeah. I
So
just
it's just,
I find that encouraging because it's like we have modern day martyrs. We have people now. We don't hear about them a whole lot, unfortunately. If there is like if you look at Voice of the Martyrs, they do have things for kids
they do.
that you can participate in and that you can get. I used to have them delivered this little magazine to our house that talked about modern day martyrs and
Oh, I remember that.
yep,
Yeah.
and I don't know if they still have that. I should check
I
that
don't
out.
either.
That would be something to have on the podcast. But I remember thinking, man, this is important because my kids need to know what's at stake. Like why? Why are we shutting down Christianity so hard to the point where we're going to kill them? And you look at it like now, if you know your history, actually martyrdom didn't kill Christianity. It actually encouraged it.
It did.
Yeah, yeah. And so why is it important for us to understand? I mean, I guess I talked about a little bit about seeing God's hand weaving through history, but talk like why church history? Why do we need to really as Christians today homeschooling our children, educating our kids, discipling our kids? Why is it important for them to really grasp church history?
It's important because it's important for them to see the thread of how the gospel was preserved and how
Yeah.
God used these men. When you learn the biographies of men, if you just hear a name, you just read a little bit of history, it's like you're kind of getting a Jeopardy history, little pieces of
Yeah.
information. You might think of Patrick of Ireland with leprechauns and green hats and stuff
Exactly.
like that, but
Pots
you're
of
missing.
gold.
Yeah, you're missing the whole story. History learned through the lives of people that lived it is amazing. History just comes to life. Your kids will love history when they learn about the
Yeah.
lives of people, whether it's early church fathers or Americans in history. It just comes to life to learn about the biography of a person
Yeah, and
and what happened to them.
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier too when you said to see how the gospel has been preserved through the ages
Yes.
and how we
Yes.
take for granted, especially in the United States, the actual gospel message. It's not a pretty message. It's not something, I mean, it is called the good news, but there is good news to it, but it's not an easy message to deliver because you got to talk about some tough things in order to get to the good news. And I think watching church history and seeing how God values the gospel so much that he wove through history, the fabric of history, the preservation of it from culture to culture, from kingdom to kingdom, from era to era, and just understanding why. Why is it so important for my child to understand that? And I think it's just so good. I think that's why, you hit the nail on the head. That's why church history is important.
It is. Polycarp sat at the feet of the Apostle John
Wow.
as a boy. He came to their town and he was ministering to Polycarp's parents. So from the time he was a boy, he learned about Jesus from the Apostle John.
Wow. Can you imagine?
It's amazing. And then he discipled the next guy in line, Irenaeus of Lyon, and Irenaeus went and took the gospel to France. So it extended it to France. And he wrote these books explaining gospel truths. And he was really gifted in explaining the gospel to children. And he sent preachers, missionaries out all over France. And for most of Irenaeus's life, there was not persecution. But then toward the end of his life, he was killed for his faith. But these guys, they realized, well, Jesus told them that there would be persecution.
Yeah.
So they prepared their followers for the fact that they might be persecuted for their faith.
Yeah, and we don't do that anymore, do we?
We don't.
We tell them it's abundant life and it's going to be, you're going to have all this wonderful peace and all this, and then when conflict comes, we start to we turn our back on it because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't,
Yep,
it doesn't line up with my emotions or my feelings. That's another reason why church history is important, because it teaches your children that being a Christian isn't always easy. There will be the Bible tells us that you will be persecuted for your faith in one way or another,
yep,
and that your feelings aren't a dictation of what truth is. And
absolutely. And you see how God used
yeah.
those tough things that happened to all these people for his glory and for the preservation of the gospel and the spread of the gospel.
Yep. And I know that this podcast is actually listened to in countries where the gospel is not necessarily as welcome as it could be,
Wow, that's great.
which is interesting to me. I'm sure it's probably missionaries that are like, I need something, and they just happen to stumble across it somehow. But, if you're listening in one of those countries, thank you for doing the hard thing.
Absolutely,
You are doing the hard
absolutely.
thing.
We need to remember to pray for you too.
Yes, yes, and we do pray for you. When I see like, China come up on the analytics, I'm like, "Well, Lord, just bless whoever's listening in China and just give them the faith that they need and the courage that they need." We just have to really remember that not everybody in the world has it as easy as we do in the United States to follow Jesus.
Absolutely. We've had it the easiest.
We
We really
really
have.
have. Well, I want to talk one more person that I want to talk about, just because I just thought it was I love this story. I just really do. I love the story of William Tyndale. And
Yes,
I just think that having, just the way that anyway, could you tell us a little bit about William Tyndale?
absolutely. He was born in England. Now, see, you can see, talked about Ireland, talked about France. Well, William Tyndale was born in England, and he had a burning desire to translate the Bible into English. He was influenced by the teachings of Martin Luther, who we also talk about in
Yep,
this
he's
book
right
too,
before him.
who is in Germany. So,
Yep.
it's just all over. But he wanted to see a time when common people would be able to read the scriptures, to have a Bible, to place a Bible in the hands of the common people. The only problem was the Pope had forbidden anyone from translating the Bible from Latin into any other language. It was forbidden. So he decided to do it anyway. He felt God's calling on his life, and he spent his life as a fugitive for the gospel of Christ. The Roman Catholic Church at that time passed a law prohibiting anyone from owning a copy of the Bible or even reading it.
Wow.
And they hired a merchant. He kept printing his Bibles, Tyndale did, and they hired a merchant to buy up all of his Bibles and burn them, thinking this is going to put an end to this. The Bibles will be gone. Instead, the merchant had to purchase the Bibles. So William Tyndale used the profits from the sales to print more and more Bibles. They kept on coming. They were actually an instrument used to propagate more printing of Bibles. And providentially, Queen Anne loved the Bible and she loved Tyndale's preaching, and she would have him come and speak to her. So he was captured at one point and taken to prison, but he continued translating while he was in prison. He used that time profitably. All these guys, if they were imprisoned, they didn't stop their work. That
They
didn't
looked at it
stop
as a
them a bit.
sabbatical.
They did. They really did. So 500 days later, he was brought to trial on heresy and condemned to death. And he cried out, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." And the Lord answered that prayer. He was killed. He was put to death for the sake of the gospel. But the Lord answered his prayer, because within a few years, King Henry, who was influenced by Queen Anne, she had read the scriptures to him. And he made the comment that all kings should read this and that all people should read this. So he made a law that a copy of Tyndale's Bible was to be placed in every church in England so people could read it. And that translation has been heavily used in the famous KJV version of the Bible. So it's just amazing. I mean, God works in the minds of people. Sometimes people are just dead set against the gospel, and God changes their mind. That reminds me, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. He turns it whithersoever he will.
Yeah.
And that happens time and time again.
Yeah.
God uses people as his instruments to bring about his purposes.
I mean, it's our heritage, isn't it?
It
And
is.
it's the heritage of our children. So when we bring church history to our family and to our kids, we're giving them that heritage of like, this is what the gospel does. This is, for thousands of years, for more than about 1,000, little over 1,000 years, a normal person couldn't even read the Bible. They just couldn't even read it. And so they were dependent on people to translate it for them, which we know that people, when men are translating the Bible and they've got, that things aren't always translated properly
Yeah.
or correctly as they're reading through, and they want it, maybe they've got a sway of some sort politically or whatever, for whatever reason. And when you think about that, it's like, to be able to bring the Bible to the masses in a language that they can understand and read was absolutely, you can see it as you're reading through this book, because like you said, you start at the beginning with John and Paul, and you work your way down through history. So you start to see like, oh, the thread of how this all happened and why this was important, how God rose people up for such a time as this, and giving them that heritage is just so good.
It is. And it also helps them realize when they go through tough times in their life, we still have the same God that these guys did. And
Yeah.
God is going to take things that seem bad that happened to us and use them for good and for his glory. And that's such an important lesson to learn.
Yeah, we just don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I tell you, like I said, I'm excited, you guys, about this series. I think it's going to be amazing. And so Marilyn, let's wind it up a little bit. Tell us a bit about the other books that are coming. You don't have to go into detail, but just a little bit of a teaser about what have we got to look forward to.
Sure. The next book, which will be out very soon, is Famous Preachers and Evangelists.
Oh, that's going to be great.
And
My husband will love that one.
we talk about people like John Wesley and George Whitefield. And again, a lot of these people disagreed with each other on certain points, but they respected each other and the gospel was intact and pure.
Yeah.
Jonathan Edwards, Charles Spurgeon, Francis Asbury, who brought it to America, Peter Cartwright, George Mueller, Dwight Moody, John Harper, which is a really cool story that you might not know. He died on the Titanic, but in so doing, he was sharing the gospel. And there's a book by the guy who was his last convert before he sunk under the waves. Oh, it's so cool.
Oh my word. Now I want to read that book. Oh my goodness. Well, good
And
thing
William
summer's coming.
I know, really. And then the next book, book 3, is missionaries. And it was so hard choosing which missionaries, but
there's so many good ones.
There's so many.
Yeah.
I did Adoniram Judson and Robert Moffat, John Patton, Hudson Taylor, Amy Carmichael, Gladys Aylward, Eric Liddell, which was a really cool story.
Yep.
Betty Green, who was a pilot for God. And I guess I did her because my daughter's a pilot. It's kind of cool. Jim Elliot and brother Andrew, who was a smuggler and
God, Smuggler is the best book.
Yes, it is. It's so amazing. And the one I'm working on now is Famous Hymn Writers. And I've done Isaac Watts and Charles Wesley. I'm working on John Newton. We're going to do William Cooper, Augustus Toplady, Franny Crosby, Horatio Spafford, Francis Havergal, Philip Bliss, and Ira Sankey, which is another cool story, how his life was providentially saved during the Civil War. And years later, a man heard him singing, and he told him the story about how he had him in his gun sight. He was ready to shoot him, but Ira Sankey started singing a song that the man's mother sang when he was a child, and he could not bring himself to shoot Ira Sankey. The man that heard him singing was not a Christian, and he pled with Sankey. He said, "Will you teach me about this God whom you serve?" And he ended up getting saved years later. So it's just so amazing.
We're both very excited. We hope you are too. We hope so too. I just love you more, Marilyn. I love talking with you. Every time I do, I learn so many new things, and it gets me excited to get back to reading. It really does. I mean, I like to read. I do. I just have to read a lot. And to read for enjoyment is like when I can read for my job and enjoyment at the same time, it's just wonderful.
Absolutely. And there's actually been studies where kids retain history. Back in the 1800s, they used to teach history through stories, and kids remember the story. They learn a lot of history at the same time, but they remember the story, and it affects them. It affects their life. They can relate to that.
Yeah.
And when they have certain struggles, they can remember the person who practiced forgiveness or the person, Like we bring character into a lot that we do. So we're teaching kids
Yeah.
character in action, character in
So
practice.
important. Well, and
It
Jesus
is.
taught in stories. Jesus taught parables
He
because he
did.
knew that that's how people listened. That's how he would grab the heart of the person because of the story that he was telling. And he would give them
Absolutely.
like a moral to learn as well. So he was also talking character. And when you look at through the ages, how many cultures their entire history was oral. And just recently, like in the last couple hundred years, a lot of them have gotten written down. But for years and years, I would say centuries, it
It's
wasn't.
past it.
It was
Yeah.
passed down orally through from generation to generation to generation. And there were people who were like the keepers of the story. Like I know the Native Americans, there were people in the tribe that were the historians, the keepers, and they would be the ones that would just continue to bring forth the oral histories of their people, of their area, of their culture. And so, it's why do we teach our kids differently when we talk about history?
It works so much better.
Yeah.
I did a story about the code talkers in the What a Character series, that
Yes.
10-book
Yes.
series. And they did. I mean, they passed it down through centuries, just telling the stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's just so good. So yeah, guys, that's, if you want, if I mean, if you want stories to supplement what you're doing for history, if you want stories to really just grab your kids' attention, or just books that are going to bring them like into, this is godly character. Any of Marilyn's books are going to do that because like she said, that's kind of their heart and their passion is godly character. So it's
Yeah,
woven through everything she writes,
it is.
everything. And but taken, this just came out. So I really
Last
want
week.
to, yeah, last week, you guys, that's like recent. So early church fathers, it's on the Master Books website. I'm going to link it in the description of this podcast, but
Great.
you just can't miss it. And then keep an eye open for the other 4 that are coming out or the other three that are coming out.
Well, there's three. They should be out. I would say by the end of the summer, they'll all be out.
Oh my goodness, that's exciting. So by the
Yeah.
next school year,
Yeah.
you can plan on weaving church history in with your regular history. When you're doing, and I know that a lot of you use like knot grass and beautiful feet and sunlight and all the different things, and that they do that, but these will bring, it's like the meat of the stories
It
to,
is.
go ahead.
Yes, if you learn about some of the people in a regular history book, but they don't have the space to go into
Yeah,
detail about the person's life, and that's what you remember. I mean,
yeah,
you really do. You remember all the details and
it's
what brought
true.
them to do what they did and what they suffered and what they sacrificed. And woo, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just powerful stuff.
And it's challenging, and you know what, it sets a standard, a bar for our children. It sets it up here so that they know that's the kind of person I can be that person. And I can, if this person can walk through that, why can't I? They were just normal people like you.
Right.
And so to give them those standards to live up to is just a blessing to your kids. It's giving them the gift of just being able to reach high and trust God for big things in their life. And it's just so important to give them that. And through history, I think that that's the key, to me, the key subject where we can really give that to them.
We can. And who doesn't love a good story? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people use them for morning baskets too, and just read it
Yes.
together or read it in the evening as a family together, and they can
Yeah.
be used that way too.
We just did a whole podcast on morning baskets, you guys. So check that
Ah,
one
did
out.
you?
Yes, we
No, I'm
did.
going to check that
And
out.
yep, check that one out. And definitely these would be great for morning baskets actually. So you could get that whole, like, again, the whole 4 set box set coming out by the end of summer, so just in time for school to start in the fall. And you can have it for the next 2025-2026 school year, of just all these really wonderful stories about church history that, again, it's just something that we don't really think about. We just kind of don't give it its pride of place, I guess, as
Right.
Christian homeschoolers, and we really should. I know I didn't.
I didn't.
It just
I didn't
didn't.
either. I'm
I
just
mean,
learning about it myself, and I
yeah,
wish I had.
I wished I had too. And it's good because it also gives our kids, like, my religion, my belief system goes deep. Like, it is long. The history of what I believe is long. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who died because of it, which
Yeah.
means that people don't give their lives up for a lie generally. They give it
Right.
up when they know that it's true.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just an encouragement. It's an encouragement. So yeah, Marilyn, you're awesome. I
Well,
really
I love
like
being
you.
with you.
And we are going to do that podcast about how did you do that, because I'm telling you what, I homeschooled 3 from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I'm just like, I just don't know. I just don't know how you did it, but God bless you.
I love encouraging young moms because sometimes we get something in our head. We think we have to do it like somebody else did it, or we have to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's unique, every family's unique, and it's okay
Yeah.
to do things a different way. And I did a lot of that toward the end that I wish I'd done with all my kids. But anyway,
Yeah.
I
God
love
just
encouraging
redeems
moms.
everything, doesn't he? Even our
He
mistakes, he'll
does.
redeem them, and our kids are not any worse for the wear, because he has a
That's
plan
right.
ultimately. And we
That's
get
right.
in the way, but he doesn't let that bother him a whole lot.
Now I
So
can do it with my grandkids.
yep, exactly. Now we can do it perfect with our grandbabies. Anyway, thank you so much. Excuse me, my allergies are just killing me today. I just appreciate you. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule, and thank you for the books that you've written that are such an encouragement, a blessing to so many. I really appreciate you, Marilyn.
Thank you. Glad to do it. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you.
Bye bye.